All right. Okay, so I know a lot of you are here because it's fashion. It's luxury. And what does that mean? It means passion. So, is passion and sustainability compatible? We're going to talk today about fashion, retail, and sustainability, enemies or allies. And we have an amazing lineup of panelists for this. For starters, let me introduce a good friend and someone who's probably someone that knows more about fashion and luxury in the academic world and also in the real world, and now she's also an investor. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming María Eugenia Girón. All right. We also have someone who has founded Fun and Basics, 350 points of sale, 70 branded stores worldwide. He got the Entrepreneur of the Year award in Madrid in 2005. Join me in welcoming Javier Goyeneche. Now, we all know that most of the big, important consulting companies are the leaders in consulting in fashion and luxury. Well, what bigger group and more important than BCG? Join me in welcoming the core member of the BCG Global Fashion and Luxury Practice, also a co-author of the Pulse of the Fashion Industry Report, Catharina Martínez Pardo. We are also lucky to have now living in Madrid someone with over 30 years of experience in the luxury retail and consumer sector. She's an investor and also a mentor. She worked at Booz for many years. Berg. And then, fashion in Spain would not be the same if it wasn't for Ágatha Ruiz de la Prada.
Thank you, Paris, and welcome you all to this panel on fashion, retail, and sustainability, enemies or allies. We'll try to answer this question with our panelists today, and the first thing I want to do is to welcome them and to thank them for being here, Ágatha, Catharina, Javier, and Barrie. And the combination of their experience is going to help us out with this timely question, but a very difficult question. Of course, we have on one hand Catharina, who's an expert in sustainability. She's the co-author of the Pulse of Fashion report, which if you haven't read and if you are interested in this matter, you should. She's a principal at Boston Consulting Group, and she's going to provide a lot of data. And then we have Berg with us, she's an expert in retail, and we're going to see how retail and fashion are so connected. It will be interesting to learn from her how retailers are noticing this change in consumer behavior. Javier is the founder of Ecoalf, the company that is going to save us, hopefully, from plastics based on traceability. Probably you know the products, and if you don't know them, you should check them out. And Ágatha Ruiz de la Prada, founder of the brand that has her name. But not only that, I would say she's an innovator in the extensive sense of the word. So welcome you all. And the first thing you are probably asking yourselves is, why this topic at the South Summit? Why should we talk about fashion and sustainability and retail? And the first thing I would say, it's because it matters. And it matters a lot. And let me give you a few data. Fashion industry is the second most polluting industry in the planet. Maybe you didn't know that 20,000 liters of water are needed to produce just one T-shirt. Maybe you didn't know that 20% of the CO2 emissions are coming from the fashion industry. And also that each one of us, we throw away every year 30 kilos of textile that go into landfill. So it matters. But why at the South Summit? Because this is the summit for innovation. And we are going to need from you all people who have their focus and their careers on innovation to find the solutions. And we needed to have retail with us today because it's so combined with fashion that it would be difficult to get an answer. So this is my introduction. We'll jump into the panel, and we are going to start getting the data, the facts. Catharina, what is it? Give us some figures, numbers. What is this? Why is this industry the second most polluting industry in the planet? CO2 emissions, chemicals. What is it? Give us some figures, and then tell us, we'll go later in what we can do about it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to. So I think when we looked into the performance of the fashion industry, we first looked at it on a global and holistic scale. And what we found is that on a scale from 0 to 100, the fashion industry currently performs at a level of 42, which is not good. We looked into that data already 3 years ago, and this was even worse because there the fashion industry was at 32 out of 100. So the good news is there is some movement in the right direction. However, the bad news is it is not fast or far enough. So a few of the reasons behind that are that especially small and medium-sized companies are nowhere in sustainability at that point in time, and they have a huge catch-up potential. Another big contributing factor is that consumption is just rising. I mean, right now we're consuming on a global scale 60 to 70 million tons of fashion or textiles every year, and if we look into 2030, this number will rise well above 100 million. So the problem is only getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then we looked into, okay, what would it actually take to reach this 100? Do we have enough solutions and technologies currently in place that would help us to get there? And the sadly but devastating answer is no. So it requires a lot of innovation, to your point, and a lot of new technologies to get there. And when you look into where those technologies especially needed, it's basically everywhere. It's finding new raw materials, reducing carbon and water footprints, but especially also looking into the end of the life of the garment, into waste. 80% of all textiles produced basically go into, landfills or incineration. And knowing now, combining that with the rising consumption, this problem is only getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So,
but why should the industry care? Is it a moral problem or is it an economic problem?
Well, I think first of all, foremost, we all care about sustainability as people and companies. But on top of that, sustainability has proven to be a business case. So, I mean, just thinking it through, being more efficient in the way you use your resources obviously contributes to your positive business outcome. But on top of that, if you look into the future and try to future-proof your business, resources are getting scarce, prices are rising, so from that perspective, let alone it makes sense to invest today into something that is profitable in the future. And lastly, if you look into what drives the consumer, so the person who ultimately purchases the products, they are getting more and more educated, more and more aware of sustainability, and they take it into consideration. So if as a brand or as a company you don't have the right measures in place, consumers turn away, and therefore your top line also goes away.
Let's talk about the consumer then, and let's look at it from the perspective of retailers. You work with retailers very closely, advisor to Harrods, among others. Are they feeling this change in the consumer?
Well, I think if you talk to large enterprise, which are really, that's where I generally work, with large retailers and large apparel companies, they recognize that the consumer cares about this issue. I mean, they recognize that especially those consumers under the age of 25 really want to be conscientious consumers. So they know consumers care, and they also feel a lot of pressure from the activists and studies like the Pulse from BCG that are really positioning fashion and making it clear that it is a dirty industry. That's really what it is. And they don't want to be in that industry. Whether they're moving fast enough, I think that's, the big question. But the commitment to sustainability does come from the CEO level. They've just only recently signed a pact, 32 of the largest companies, and we'll see what happens.
We'll get back to that later. I want to hear now from Javier, because you founded Ecoalf, it's almost now 10 years ago, when we were not that aware about the problem with plastic. And you already anticipated and started Ecoalf because you wanted to address this problem. Have you seen a change in the consumer and a change in your clients since you started over the last decade?
Well, we started, it was not only about plastic, it was about natural resources as a whole. So the idea of Ecoalf was wanted to create a sustainable brand, and we thought the most sustainable thing to do was not to keep on using natural resources. So it was about recycling, not only plastics, but cotton, wool, many kinds of materials. I think there's been a big change, especially over the last probably year and a half. So you can see a big change. But I agree. I think the change is too slow. I think what we're facing is much more worrying than you can imagine. I think the amount of waste we're creating in the world, it's absolutely ridiculous. And it's not only about recycling plastics, it's about the economic model, which is not working. I think we can't keep on buying T-shirts of €3, buying, throwing, because it's creating a lot of waste. And every T-shirt, as you say, is many thousands of liters of water. There's not enough water to make T-shirts for another 2 billion people by 2050. There's not enough surface to keep on growing cotton. There's not enough surface, and there's not to keep on building landfills. So I think it's not only about the materials, but also about an economic model which doesn't work anymore.
This is a challenge, and we are going to talk about this challenge, which is growth versus sustainability, and how to address that, which I think is at the core of the problem. But before we move on, you have just started a joint venture in Japan. Can you feel a sense of difference? Is the Japanese consumer more sensitive to this issue or less? Any experience or any insights there?
Well, I think luckily there's people sensible in all markets. So there's people in Japan which are sensible, there's people in the US which are sensible, there's people in Germany which are sensible, and there's people who are in Germany that are not sensible. So obviously I would say the north of Europe is more open to this kind of thing, so they're more advanced. But luckily there's starting to be people in all countries which are starting to get aware and that really want to make sure that they support brands that they feel comfortable with the values they represent.
Okay. Ágatha, you've just been in the fashion shows in Milan and Paris, and tell us about it, because there was so much talk about sustainability, a concern about the fashion industry being a dirty industry. Just after that, or just before that, in the month of August, we had the Fashion Pact that was signed in Biarritz right before the G7. What are your thoughts? What are your insights as a founder of a fashion brand?
Well, I am quite an optimistic person in general, and I have been green since I was a child. I have been my grandfather was obsessed with sustainability, so it's something I have been all my life in. Speaking, I've been in the Green Party. I have done nearly all of the interviews I have had in my life, I speak about these kind of issues. And I think something important is happening now. For the first year and a half, but in the last season, I realized, I was in New York 2 weeks ago, and for the first time, everywhere in the shops, in the museums, everywhere they were speaking about the nature and design, no? And people are beginning to realize that there is nothing more fashionable than sustainability. So the day you realize that what is really fashion is to be green is a big day, you know? So there are little things we don't know how to act, because there is an industry very difficult to change, because it has been one of the industries who has changed the less in the last 500 years, because we continue to realize the tissues, there is a lot of handwork. And if you think of that, we are like in the middle times, no? So in the like 100 years, or 1,000 years ago, we continue to produce more or less in the same style, no? So there are little changes. Javier Goyeneche is one of the examples, and all of us are very proud of him. I worked with him like 30 years ago. He was doing my bags, or I was working for him. But now everybody's thinking, everybody is wishing to do that. I think very few people know how to do it, but there is the real conscience to do that. So I think there are two ways to change the world. There is the luxury way, which is saying you must buy more expensive things. That's nice, but I don't believe a lot in that thing, because once you realize you can buy a T-shirt for 10 euros, buying a T-shirt for 5,000 euros or 500 euros, it's very difficult to apply. There will be a little public for that. The other thing in which I am very optimistic is the big companies who are polluting. They have, for example, if I go to a factory in India and I say to them, if you continue to pollute the river, I will never in my life buy you. They will laugh because they don't mind. But if Inditex, H&M, and another one goes there, and Uniqlo, and say, we will never buy if you don't pollute, they began to change everything in 5 minutes. So I know very well the CEO of Inditex, and I know a little the owner of Inditex, and they are very intelligent people, and I am sure they want to do it. Because once you have all the money in the world, you want to have the reputation, no? And they want to have the reputation, so they can change the world.
So you think this fashion pact, it's really a good idea, bringing all of these companies together to commit?
It's not only the pact, it's something that no one can stop. This is something that no one can stop, as you are seeing in America, no? Trump say we have to stop that, and the society is moving, and they are not going to stop. So now we have to, this is the best place to be today, because I think we are in a wonderful moment of everything has to change, and all the young people have to imagine how to change little things. I believe a lot in the little changes, because a lot of good actions can change the world, no? So in a place like that, we can, I hope next year and the other year there will be more textiles startups, but things like that can change the world, because we need, now we need to know how to do it. And these people have to imagine how to do it.
Let's talk a bit about regulation. Regulation for single-use plastics in Europe, for instance, this directive, it's making a lot of people conscious and probably changing habits. Would regulation help us to make the industry more sustainable? Or is it better to let the industry players regulate themselves? Where do you stand here, Javier?
I think regulation helps. At the end of the day, I mean, we started putting our safety belt because there was a regulation. No? And the third time they put you a fine of 200 euros, you probably started putting the safety belt. No? I think regulation is very important. What is obvious is that there's more than 8 million tons of trash coming into the ocean every year. And there's people throwing that trash into the rivers. So you have to regulate this, because we cannot keep on permitting that to go on. So I think regulation is very important. Unfortunately, I believe regulation is coming very late and very weak. So we've been in various panels with different governments, and you talk to them about the project, and they say, no, we're going to stop. We're going to start forbidding las pajitas. No sé cómo se dice pajitas.
The straws, the plastic straws.
Yeah, but I mean, ¿sabes? It's like, so you guys, after all you heard, you're going to stop. No, start.
So you think regulation is too
I think
slow
regulation
and too
is
little?
No, I think regulation is very important,
Very
but
important.
people, if everybody that take a bath, in every bath of everybody, you take a little plastic from the sea, it's nothing. But millions of people doing that every day, that can change a lot, no?
Makes a difference. When we were talking, Barrie, you were saying this is like a stop smoking campaign.
Yes.
It has some similarities, a combination of regulation, consumer change.
Well, I think that's, one of the things that is motivating fashion to move on this topic is the concern about the potential for regulation. I mean, industry would rather do it to themselves. They'd rather take action. And I think that, even though they're not at the point of, let's say, taking action on demand, they're stopping short of not trying to push growth, they are trying to look up and down the supply chain that they control and try to eliminate, and make it more sustainable.
No, but
so
I think
they're trying.
the big companies want more than the people even, because they need that. What can Amancio Ortega have? Now he's the most, which
Yeah.
if he has democratized fashion, now he has to sustainabilize fashion. And I think that he will be the most happy man in the world if he arrives to that, and he can arrive to that.
No, I agree with that. And when I talk to my clients, I think that sustainability for the fashion industry has become almost a creative challenge. It's not just a business challenge. They're excited about trying to tackle it. They may not know how. They may not move fast enough to satisfy us. But some of what they're doing isn't visible.
So would you say it could be a competitive advantage for the companies that are sustainable, the first players, but really?
In a future, you will be sustainable or you will die.
Yes.
So that's...
So there's not even a chance of not being. However, yes, this looks very nice, but the reality is that sustainability and growth are in conflict. This is what Catharina was telling us.
But it's much more important sustainability than growth now, I think.
What about companies? Companies thrive on growth. They want to sell more and more clothes. How do we reconcile that?
They are selling less and less, except in the text and tomorrow.
Yeah, but this is where I think the circular economy comes in. I do think that models like rental and vintage, upcycling, these are things that are really important. Those new business models are going to play an important role. They already are. They're quite big startups, ThreadUp, there's Rent the Runway. These are now important companies, and the large players are looking very hard at those business models. Some have already launched those models
new
as well.
consumption models could be part of it.
Yes.
I want to ask you another question. Could this sustainability be a country competitive advantage? I was reading an interview with the Swedish ambassador to Spain, and he was saying that this is a competitive advantage for Sweden because they started earlier.
I was last year in Costa Rica, and in Costa Rica there is an obsession with that. I have been 3 or 4 times in Costa Rica, and the children, the old people, everybody is excited with recycling.
So good.
Let's, in this forum, let's connect innovation and sustainability. And how does it work? Give us some thoughts, examples, insights into this. Javier, you're probably very well equipped for that.
Well, I think sustainability is very linked to innovation, especially with upcycling. Upcycling, it's a lot about innovation. When we started a long time ago, it seemed we weren't going to be able to do certain things, which it was a matter of investing, it was a matter of time, and we were able to do it now. So it has a lot to do. But I think that right now, it's the fact that you want to be sustainable. The innovation is there. You can be sustainable. The problem is, do you want to be sustainable? Because, most of the things are invented, so you can do it. The problem,
Javier, everybody wants.
No.
I'm sure.
No,
Yes.
I'm sure. Everybody wants.
Who
Let's ask.
to be
Let's ask. Who wants to be sustainable? Raise
Yeah, but
your
that's
hand.
not. Yeah, but that's.
That's
good. Good. But then, one thing is wanting, another thing is really making it happen. And at the end of the day, I work with a lot of companies, and I don't want to put examples here, but margin is sometimes more important than sustainability. Your business model is more important than sustainability. The bonus of the buying people are more important than sustainability. I see it every day. And at the end of the day, they don't make those decisions because it goes against the margin, it goes against the business, it goes against many things. So you could make those decisions. In my opinion, they're making them very slow because at the end of the day, it's complicated for the business because the business is very profitable in that direction.
But I think once we have the instruments, it will go very quickly. But in this moment, we don't have the instruments.
Yes.
Catharina, you talk to a lot of companies. Do you see companies giving up growth or profit because of their values of sustainability and responsibility? How often do you see this? Are you as optimistic as Ágatha or as, I don't know, pessimistic or realistic as Javier?
No, I'm not pessimistic.
You're realistic.
No, see, I think I tell what I see. And what I'm pessimistic is that the more you get into here, the more you realize that today, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem, because we're creating so much waste that the world is not going to be able to keep on accepting that waste. I mean, and we need to react, and there's not enough water, and there's not enough land, and we don't need to buy T-shirts, 20 T-shirts every year. So there's a lot of things we need to change because the world has a limit.
But I think there are some companies who are really starting to change their business models, and some of it is going against growth, and they are definitely reinvesting money differently. And I think this is the first step. So, I mean, putting money towards innovation, some of it isn't invented, but not everything is scaled. And helping those companies to really bring solutions that can help big companies on a global scale to make an impact. I think these are the right steps in the first direction. Again, I'm a big believer it's not going fast enough, but I think to answer your question, we do see more and more companies in different segments of the fashion industry actually taking actions that cut into their profit.
That's good.
Yeah. And I think,
Barrie,
I was just
have
going
you
to say,
seen
and
this with retailers giving up profits and growth for being better to the environment and have a positive social impact? Are you seeing this?
I have seen moves by retailers to try to, I don't think they're giving up growth, but they are moving into areas like, for example, Harvey Nichols moving into their Restory initiative, which is basically about being able to bring your leather goods or your clothes and having that remade, reimagined, so increasing the longevity of goods, for example. But no, I don't see them giving up growth or profits. But I would like to say, and I think this is a great audience to say this, is that one of the things that those large companies need are new technology. And I think they're really open to adopt it. Like Genetopia is a Spanish company. They have innovated the process for finishing the fabric on jeans, and that technology is now used on 1/3 of the jeans produced in the world. So that's what we need. We need solutions like that.
And another good thing is I see that everywhere in the world. I am always traveling, so I see that in all the countries of the third world. The other day I was in Colombia, and in a big supermarket shop with El Éxito, which is like a little bit like El Corte Inglés in Spain, they had 10 things to recycle once you go out of the shop. More than in Spain, it's very difficult to find 10 different boxes to recycle different things, no? So it's not only in Europe, it's not only in the States, it's everywhere in the world.
Yeah, Javier said, if you are not part of the solution, you are part of the problem. We have a crowd here, they are all into innovation, investors, entrepreneurs, people who work to drive change in the world. So this is a real opportunity for a call to action to them. And I'm going to invite you all, in the few seconds that we have now, to call to action these people so that we start moving the needle. Would you like to start, Barrie?
Sure. Well, I'd like to say, just following on some of my earlier comments, that really large enterprise is, the top 100 companies, that they have 97% of the profits in the industry. So if there are new technologies or ideas or innovations, I'm speaking both to investors and startups, I would go for it. They're open to it, and I would encourage you.
Thank you, Javier. Call to action.
Well, I would say that I strongly believe we cannot keep on living in this planet as if we had another one to go to when this one is destroyed. And now we have two options. You can act as if nothing is happening until it's too late, or you can take action. I think the moment to take action is now. I think there's a lot of generations here, and I think we need to tackle it immediately. We have to put pressure on governments. We have to be very conscious of what things we're buying. And I think we really need to move fast.
Fast, pressure. Catharina, few seconds, time's up, few seconds.
Collaborate. I think investors, startups, brands need to work together in order to find solutions and especially scale those solutions because it takes a lot of time and money to do it.
Collaboration and scaling, Ágatha.
And I believe a lot in the little action. Every day, every one of us has to do hundreds of little actions, and that can change the world. I'm sure about that.
Thank you, Ágatha. Please welcome me in thanking our panel today.